One of the most useful terms I've learned anytime recently to describe people these days is the term wantrepreneur. I think you can pretty much guess from how it sounds what it means, and there is an absolute flood of wantrepreneurs these days. Everybody's got their own YouTube channel. I know it's ironic that I'm saying this on my YouTube channel, but bear with me here. Everybody's got their own Discord server. Everybody's setting up their own online brand. Everybody's a musician that's selling their music, or everybody's selling a course on masculinity for some reason. Like specifically that, people are selling a ton as if, you couldn't just read the Torah or something, or they're selling courses teaching people how to teach people how to sell courses, or how to sell courses that teach people how to sell courses on courses that teach people how. This kind of messaging is especially prevalent in the spheres that young men frequent, with big influencers such as Andrew Tate, to an extent John Hopkins. I don't know how big he is these days. I think he's losing followers, rightly so. But there are a lot of big people in the kind of sphere for young men, red pill, manosphere, whatever you want to call it, who really, really drive entrepreneurship, freelancing, making money on your own, rather than being an employee. Because being an employee is for normies. It's for people who want security and are okay being poor, because every employee is poor, according to Andrew Tate. This isn't me talking, he just blanket refers to them as poor people. As well, these days, entrepreneurs themselves, especially the very successful ones, are a lot more vocal. They all have a podcast, and they go on other people's podcasts to podcast about podcasting while they podcast together. And, they have their own YouTube channels, and they sell their own courses on how you can succeed just like I did, and how you can start your own business, and how you can make a ton of money, and there's a million self-help books written by all of them. This opposed to, for example, back in the Gilded Age, would Andrew Carnegie be writing a book telling everybody how you can make money? Well, he did actually write a book on wealth, so maybe that's not a very good example. But, Rockefeller isn't selling his online course teaching you how you can also become an oil tycoon. As well, simply put, in the modern social media landscape where you have flashy jump cuts and quick edits and this and that, it's very easy to make a certain lifestyle seem sexy. Because back in the day, it was you just kind of read or thought about, I could risk everything on a business that might make me millions of dollars, but has a greater chance of ruining me. And you're just sitting there imagining it in your head in the 1950s or whatever. And you're thinking, that'd be nice to have that flashy car, but I'd rather eat, and I'd rather my family eat too. So, nah. But these days, the guy with the flashy car might not just drive by once a month, maybe at most, in front of your house and make you jealous. Hell no. That guy is in your feed. You can see him driving his car. You can see him hopping out of that car and telling you can own a car like this if you do X, Y, and Z and just do everything I did, and it will work for you as well. And as such, it's very easy to make that entrepreneurial lifestyle seem overwhelmingly sexy. And just nothing else in comparison is at all as cool as that. There are two main pernicious effects to this. The first pernicious effect is that it leads to a devaluation in the minds of a lot of people of wage workers, first of all themselves, as Andrew Tate just says, poor people, peasants. In part, that's him going for shock value, but people on the internet these days, they just kind of absorb everything. If their favorite influencer told them to kill their families, some people would slaughter their families. That's the world we live in. And thus they absorb these messages deprecating simple wage workers who, they're just chasing security. They don't have any drive. They don't have any ambition. They're not real G's like we are. They're not top G's. And it also leads to a devaluation in many people's minds of the specific, wage jobs, which may be perfectly good for them and good at getting them money. Because, whenever they say, you need to get money in order to succeed in this world as a man, they're always talking about entrepreneurship for some reason. Like, whenever they talk about making money, it's always making money on your own as a freelancer rather than just, getting a paycheck. There are people out there, they'll pay you money to do things. And I know they'll pay you money to do things for you in your business, but they'll also just pay you money every month to do things for their business. Also, the second and most critical pernicious effect of this is that it simply ignores reality. The economy only has need of so many businesses. There's only so many good ideas out there, and most of them have already been taken. And yeah, there are many more good ideas, and if you actually have a good idea, then I'm not saying don't go after it, but you gotta be sure that that's a good idea and that that's something new. Because we already have many different businesses. We already have a bajillion online businesses because every entrepreneur has their online store that gets 2 sales a month. And just to support the amount of businesses that we currently have, we need people working wage jobs. These businesses need employees, or the economy simply isn't going to function. The economy can only support so many different entrepreneurs all competing over the same pool of other people's money. But this kind of messaging doesn't just ignore economic reality, it also ignores the reality of who people are. People who succeed as entrepreneurs, they're not like most people. And it's true that it is in part trainable things that self-improvement influencers, masculinity influencers telling people to start their own businesses talk about, such as discipline and work ethic. But those are barriers to entry. If you don't have discipline and work ethic, then no matter who you are, no matter what kind of an idea you have, you absolutely won't succeed as an entrepreneur. You will absolutely get eaten alive by the market. But you may have discipline and work ethic. You may be a great worker, but you're not necessarily going to succeed as an entrepreneur. First of all, success often depends not solely just on you, but of course there is your circumstances. I'm not going to pretend that that's not a thing. They always deny, no, you can overcome your circumstances. You can, sometimes you aren't able to, and if you aren't taking them into account when making decisions for your future, I'm poor now, I don't have any startup capital, but I'm going to start anyways, and I'm just going to ignore that. Maybe you should start depending on the idea that you have, but if you just ignore the circumstances of your life and don't treat them as a factor at all when it comes to the decision of whether or not you're going to try to start that business, you're an absolute retard. And also whether or not you're going to succeed depends a lot on the business idea itself that you have. A lot of entrepreneurs, a lot of big careers started with a really good idea. And if you don't have a really good idea, if you don't have a unique idea, if you don't have some angle that will allow you to stand out, and most entrepreneurs don't, then you will be murdered. As well, even among disciplined, hardworking people, not everybody is actually cut out to be an entrepreneur. There's a certain kind of ingenuity, a certain way that people think that sets apart people who work well as wage workers, and you're a good worker, be good slave. There's nothing wrong with just being somebody who's good at working and doing a specific job. Being an entrepreneur is just a job. At the end of the day, it's a job like any other job. It's a unique kind of job in that, the nature of the job is very different depending on the business that you're doing and depending on the hours that you set for yourself, and you don't have a different boss technically, although I would argue that you have as many bosses as you have customers, really, at the end of the day. That's something that they really don't mention, is that you're as much at the beck and call of a lot of other people as you are when you're working in a regular company. It's just that those people are customers and they're technically beneath you or whatever when you're an entrepreneur. But other people are dictating your future just to the exact same extent. But I digress. At the end of the day, some people are cut out for that specific job. Just like some people are cut out to be engineers. Some people are cut out to be salesmen. Some people are cut out to be this. Some people are cut out to be that. If your particular affinities, your natural skills, what you like and what you're good at is more geared towards being an entrepreneur, and you have life circumstances geared towards entrepreneurship, if you also have a good idea, because the business depends a lot on the idea that you have, whether or not that market is saturated, etc. You gotta actually study the playing field instead of just being like, I will succeed because I believe in myself, because that's not really how the world works. Sorry. If XYZ ABC, then go for it. But you don't need to do that. There are other equally valid things to do with your life.